It's totally fine. I have a lot more stories.
That you do.
Yeah.
That you do.
Guilty as charged with the stories.
Hello. Hey, it's me, Chris, welcoming you once again to the podcast titled, I've Got Something to Say. It's my podcast where I tell you stories about my life, and I thank you so much for tuning in. You don't really tune in on a podcast, but you're listening. However you listen, I appreciate it. This week's episode is called Best to Let Him Finish, Clark. I watched the Oscars last night, and I don't know when you're listening to this, but it's the 2019 Oscars, and I will tell you that I was almost brought to the point of tears many times, and every single time it happened, it was about the same thing. It was about people talking about the power of stories. And I was either overcome with people who had given their all and sacrificed and risked everything to become storytellers, be it through being actors or writers or producers or costume designers. But the power of story was what compelled them to put everything on the line because it was so important to them. And then I started thinking about the power of story in teaching. And you look at the major teachers throughout time, the Jesus, the Buddha, any number of religious or of political leaders, they all really had this power of story. And so I was just overcome with story and its impact and its potential to change us, because you can tell people a formula, you can tell them what they should do, but when you connect with them using a story, somehow it's much more powerful. So as I was thinking about this and about these people that risked all and that gave everything to devote their life to the craft of storytelling, I was thinking about my dumb podcast. And I thought there's one story that I haven't told yet that many people have told me is my best story. Now, I don't know if it truly is my best story or not, but it's a story that for whatever reason, I'm 30 some odd episodes in and I haven't told yet. And so I guess the grandeur of the Oscars and just the beauty of these life-changing, life-affirming stories has inspired me to tell the story that I want to relate to you right now. And this story harkens back to when I was 16 years old. And Paul, you're going to remember some of this. Oh, yeah. So I went to church camp, and it was down at Lake of the Ozarks. And Paul, you were actually there with me that year. We were 16, right? That was the age. Okay. So we're 16. We go to church camp, and it was super cool. We had a great time. Church camp was fun because there always seemed to be a spiritual element, which, okay, it's church camp, but there was like a spiritual connection at some point throughout the week. You would just connect and feel this connection with something bigger than you. People call it God, they call it Christ, they call it the universe. I'm not here to define that for you, but that was always part of church camp. And then there was this other part of church camp, which was, can I get a girl to go to campfire with me? And there were all these little camp, I don't know if romances is pushing it. Is that too much, you think? No. Okay.
That's accurate.
Yeah. So, you want somebody to go hang out with you, to go to campfire with you. And so at this camp, I kind of got a crush on a girl. We'll call her Heather. And because that is actually her name. And so we actually did go to campfire a couple of times. In my mind, I blew it up to be this huge, beautiful relationship. I was sure we were going to get married, have several kids. In reality, we went to campfire a couple of times. we may have kissed, but that may be inaccurate. I don't know if my memory's correct on that. Anyway, camp was great. Come home from camp, and I go up to the campus swimming pool, and she is up there, and we talk and, hang out, go to the snack bar. I show off my cannonballs and my preacher seats and whatever else. And she mentions that she is going to Camp Moja and sort of intimates that maybe I would like to go to Camp Moja as well. Now, Camp Moja is a camp for special needs kids. So the kids come to attend the camp, and then they get a one-on-one camper to counselor relationship. So she was going to be a counselor and then have a camper that she would take care of. And she was suggesting that I, might find it fun to go and have a camper as well. So I'm like, are you kidding me? My God, this girl who I am in love with wants me to go to Camp Moja. Yeah. Now, again, in my mind, it's, oh God, she wants me to go to Camp Moja. In reality, it may have been, yeah, I'm not going to be here next week because I'm going to Camp Moja, and I somehow turned that into, oh my God, she totally wants me to go. Either way, I go and tell my boss from my summer job, hey, I need next week off because I'm going to this camp for special kids. And he's like, yeah, you already had a week off for church camp, so I need you to be here. If you want to go to that camp, you might as well quit. I'm like, all right, I'll quit. So I quit my job to go to Camp Moja. And this is going to be epic because this is going to be the start of a beautiful relationship for Heather and I. And we get to Camp Moja. The first night, it's counselors only, so it's party time. And I remember we went to the pool. This was at Camp Donovan in Excelsior Springs, Missouri. And they're playing, loud music, probably some surf tunes. Everybody's having fun. And dude, I'm on fire. I got zingers coming out left and right. I'm cracking everybody up. The girls love me. The guys want to be me. I know I've got it going on. And I'm thinking, okay, man, I am laying the groundwork for a very successful week here. Well, the next day, our campers show up. We get to meet our campers. And everybody gets camper. I get Jimmy. And Jimmy was a nice kid, very friendly. Met him and, he gave me a big hug. Everything was fine. Now, they came in the afternoon. We all went to dinner. We had a campfire. Then it was time to go to our rooms. And the way the setup was, it was in a lodge. So it's kind of like dorm rooms, sort of. So we had 3 to 4 bunk beds in a room, and then each room also had a bathroom in that room. I'm in there the first night with Jimmy, me and Jimmy, 3 other counselors and 3 other campers. And we had a poster of Michael Jackson on the wall. We go to bed, and about 10 minutes later, I hear weird noises. And it's Jimmy kind of laughing, and then I'm hearing some licking sounds. And I get up, and Jimmy is up, and he is licking the face of Michael Jackson on the poster. I'm like, well, that's odd. Hey, Jimmy, let's go to bed, bud. Let's get back in bed. All got to go to bed. The week slowly devolved from there. The next day, we're in line for lunch, and I hear Jimmy laughing, and it's a gregarious, it's a fun laugh. And I turn and I look as we're in the lunch line, and Jimmy has Lil Jimmy out, and he's self-flagellating. He's treating his body like an amusement park and laughing in front of everyone. Well, he's 15. I am 16 years old at this time. I don't know how to handle this. I don't know what to do. I just know that it's not appropriate to pleasure yourself in line to get lunch. I just know that's not right. So I stop him, and I honestly don't remember how. I don't know if I grabbed his arm. I don't know if I spoke gruffly to him, but I made him stop. we get through the line, we sit down, we get our ravioli, we get our sunshine salad, we've got our peaches. They're all on our tray. And I look over, and Jimmy very deftly is shoveling ravioli into his mouth while masturbating underneath the lunch table and laughing all at the same time. A, I'm aghast that this is happening. B, I'm a little impressed that he's got the coordination to pull this whole feat off. C, I know I've got to stop it because you can't do that. There's a time to do it. And believe me, at 16 years old, I knew there's a time to do this, okay? I totally got that part of it. I just knew this wasn't the time. So I stop him. We go to swim. Jimmy, if I leave him alone for a moment, is grabbing a girl, it doesn't matter which one, wrapping his legs and going all Mississippi leg hound on whatever girl it is. And so I'm having to pull him off. The lifeguards are blowing whistles. The leaders are pulling me aside. You've got to keep him away. You can't let him do that to people. Now, to be fair to me, that's not really a fair thing to ask an untrained 16-year-old to deal with. To be fair to Jimmy, yes, he had whatever, mental deficiencies or lesser abilities he may have had, but he had a body that, was raging like a 15-year-old. And so he didn't know how to handle it. So we're two people thrown together that don't know how to handle this situation. So the leaders, God bless them, decide the best thing to do is to segregate Jimmy from the rest of the people. So they pull me aside and say, hey, Jimmy can't really be around other people, obviously. So we're going to keep him away from the rest of the group as much as we can. So we're going to give you and Jimmy your own room away from everyone else. So they take me out of the room with the other 3 campers and counselors and put us in our own room down at the end of the hall. So at nighttime, it's just me and Jimmy, and then we have to sit away from everybody else at every activity. We have to stay in our own separate part of the pool. Also, this is 1984. I'm not saying any of this is appropriate today, and thank God we've evolved as a society. And perhaps we would equip our teenage counselors with better knowledge and skills of how to handle these things. But it is what it is in 1984. So Jimmy and I have our own room. Now, as I am trying to keep him from completing all week, I'm also watching Heather, who I came down here to hang out with, and let's be honest again, I'm not here because of some great affinity that I have for these kids that are campers because I really want to help them. I'm there because I like a girl, okay? And it's not the right thing to say, and it's certainly nothing to be proud of, but it's just the truth. Well, I'm watching Heather with her well-behaved camper, and this guy named Matt with his well-behaved camper, and I'm noticing that they're sitting next to each other at campfire while Jimmy and I are on the outer ring a good 20 feet away from everybody else. And guess what? While Jimmy and I are relegated to the kiddie pool, Matt and Heather are hanging out by the big kid pool together while their well-behaved campers are doing what they should do in the big kid pool. So I'm seeing that Matt's making time where I thought I was going to be making time while I'm trying to stop Jimmy from making time with Jimmy. And that has become my entire week. So this went on, and I could blather on and on about more instances of me trying to stop him, but it really became just a marathon of me looking forward to that Saturday when parents would come pick up their kids and it would all be over. So finally, Friday night comes. It's the last night. We have our touching campfire. People are crying because they've had so many great connections during the week, and they're hugging. I'm sure Matt and Heather are hugging extra long. Meanwhile, me and Jimmy are off by ourselves to the side with me constantly slapping his arm away from himself. And we trudge off to our isolated, segregated room alone. We go to sleep. Now, you may remember I said that these were like dorm rooms where we had our little sleeping area with our own bathroom attached in that little bunk room. Well, I got up extra early the last morning of camp, and I went into our bathroom that was inside our little dorm room, and I turned on the shower, and I just leaned against the wall. So I've got my arms bent up against the wall, my forehead leaning against my arms, and I'm letting the warm water cascade down over my body and just wash away the memories of one of the most horrible weeks of my life. And I start to pray. And I'd been to many church camps at this particular campground before. I had many profound spiritual experiences that I remember to this day. And so it seemed like, the most appropriate place, the most appropriate time to turn to God. And I started to pray. And I just said to my Lord and Savior, dear God, thank you so much for seeing me through this week. I thank you that this week has finally come to an end. And that this day Jimmy can go back and be with his family, and that I can go back and be with mine. And as I'm praying and thanking God for delivering me from this week of hell, all of a sudden I feel like an electric shock, just this large boom on my back. And I don't know what's happening, but I know all of a sudden I'm not leaning against the wall, but I'm staggering out of the shower. I'm trying to keep my balance, and I feel a huge weight on my back, and it slowly dawns on me that someone has accosted me from the backside. I look down, and I see two legs wrapped around my naked waist, and two arms are up underneath my forearms, clinging hard to me like a baby baboon hanging on to its mother. And as the realization slowly dawns on me, horror falls over me at the same time. Because Jimmy has woken up, disrobed, and come into that bathroom with 5 inches of fury ready to go, and has jumped on me and attached himself to me. And he, like a jigsaw puzzle piece, is fitting into the small of my back. And I don't know what to do. And so I'm stomping around the bathroom like Frankenstein, and probably sounding like him too. Oh. I don't know how many seconds, I don't know how many minutes that we had our little dance there. And he was just laughing away uproariously in my ear. I was in horror. I finally get him off my back and throw him on the ground. And he just lays there, none the worse for the wear, looking me straight in the eye, continuing to laugh with unwavering eye contact and masturbating while staring at me. Now, I'm 16. This is the closest thing to a sexual experience I've had in my life. And I don't know what to do. So I called Jimmy a horrible name that I'm actually not going to repeat here. I think, probably smart on my part. Again, it was 1984. I was 16. I didn't know what to do. I physically kick him out of the bathroom. I then curl up in a ball in the shower and rock back and forth. I don't know if I actually did that, but I certainly did. If I didn't do it physically, I did it figuratively and emotionally in my mind. And tried to let the water wash the shame away. I go out, I get dressed, I pack my stuff up. Jimmy is ready to leave. He gives me a huge hug, goes away, and I am I'm ashamed. I'm in shock. I leave, so I've lost Heather, perhaps lost my virginity, I'm not sure. And I'm sure I'm flattered, but also a bit confused at everything that's transpired here. So for about 6 months, I carry around this private shame. And finally, I get the nerve after much prayer and meditation and concern, and I tell my dad that I need to talk to him. And my dad is a licensed counselor. I mean, that's what he does for a living. He had been a pastor. I don't believe he still was at this time. So he had a lot of compassion, a lot of empathy. He understood working with people who had dealt with difficult circumstances. And I remember I set him down. I said, Dad, I have been carrying something around, and I've got to tell someone. I've got to get this off my back. I don't know what it means, but here's what's happened. And I told him the entire story. And my God, that man could listen. So he listened all the way through the story. And then he looked at me and goes, had the biggest laugh I've ever seen him have in his entire 56 years he had on this planet. I never saw him laugh louder. So while it tainted and perhaps ruined me for the rest of my life, I guess the gift of laughter to my father made it all worthwhile. So that does it for this edition of I've Got Something to Say. Hey, thank you so much for tuning in and listening. Really kind of cathartic for me this week to get that off my chest. Big thank you to the folks at KCTK Radio, my good buddy Paul, for making this happen. Check out all the fine programming at KCTK. Lots of good podcasts there. I will talk to you next time.